Imagine a bustling city where self driving cars glide seamlessly through traffic, autonomous trucks deliver goods with precision, and delivery drones zip overhead, all orchestrated by advanced artificial intelligence autonomous vehicles. Now, these concepts are no longer a futuristic fantasy but a transformative force reshaping global transportation, commerce, and education. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Analytics Insight podcast, where we explore the technologies shaping tomorrow and the people making it happen. And I'm your host, Priya Dialani. Now, autonomous vehicles or AVs are no longer the stuff of science fiction. Around the world, they are being tested, refined, and in some places already integrated into everyday transportation. But there's a key factor that determines whether these vehicles actually make it to our roads, and that's testing. Robust, precise, and scalable testing. And in a country like India, with its unique road conditions, traffic density, and unpredictable driving scenarios, this is a far bigger challenge than simply plugging in some global tech. And today, we are going to talk about exactly how innovators are tackling this. Let's welcome Shitendra Bhattacharya, Regional Director, Emerson's Test and Measurement Business Group. Hi, Shitendra, how are you doing?
Hi, Priya. Thank you for having me on this podcast. Excited to share some of my views, and I think it's a great topic that you have there. A lot of discussions around this, so happy to go over the podcast in detail.
Definitely. I think it's going to be a very interesting discussion today. And it's a pleasure to have you with us on our podcast today. So let's start, by telling our listeners more about Emerson. So if you could help us understand about the organization, its specialization, or any particular solution the company is offering.
Sure. So Emerson is a 135-year-old company, and it's known to be a global industrial automation technology leader. And that's they basically provide a lot of advanced automation across varied industries. It has an unmatched portfolio of intelligent devices, control systems, software, and Emerson is known to deliver solutions that automate and optimize a lot of business performances. In 2023, in October, Emerson had acquired NI, and NI was one of the leading test and measurement companies back then. And it had acquired NI and created a new business group called the Test and Measurement Business Group. So at NI and Emerson, there is a shared commitment to continuous innovation, driving operational excellence and sustainability. And so in this new chapter, we are really looking at seeing how we could build our legacy and focus on the leadership in software-connected automated test and measurement systems. And that's what NI has always stood for the years it has existed. And we continue to focus on that as part of the Emerson's Test and Measurement Business Group as well. And yeah, we continue to remain focused on investing in a lot of the industry-leading innovations where we are constantly delivering, value and differentiated solutions to our customers across the globe. And we're helping engineers solve some of the world's toughest challenges.
Great. Thank you for that overview, Shitendra, and, breaking that down for our listeners. I think it's very important that, to pause on what you said, because the way your organization has positioned itself in a landscape which involves more precision, specifically in terms of how you want to lead the way in software connected test and measurement solutions. I think it's about carving out a clear identity in a very competitive market. Moving ahead, Shitendra, we would also like to know more about you. You are passionate about building and growing businesses and teams with a strategic vision, powerful execution, and you have always focused on results. So, we would like to know more about you. How has the journey been till date, and what garnered your interest at Emerson's Test and Measurement Business Group, and what exactly is your role at the company?
Yeah, great question. I think back then when we were NI and even now, we continue to keep helping engineers and scientists solve some of the world's toughest challenges. I think that's one of the biggest attraction for me because, in my position and my role, I mean, just for the, listeners, I do lead the India operations and I'm helping engineers, scientists, and even enterprises accelerate innovation, especially across domains in semiconductor, electronics, automotive, aerospace, and research. And I think one of the key exciting things for me has been that I've always been at the forefront of cutting edge technology. You get to see a lot of things that are getting innovated well before the world does. And to be a part of that journey for companies where you're able to help them bring their products out successfully into the market I think gives you a sort of a kick. And knowing that you've enabled their success is even more sweeter. So I have focused on building strong teams and go-to-market strategies. Whether it be focused on areas like design, verification, power management, etc. And my goal really is to position India as a strategic innovation hub for the Emerson Test Measurement Business Group, where we are driving real outcomes for customers. Personally, I also am fairly passionate about scaling small size businesses and support startups as an angel investor. I've been sector agnostic and I generally focus on companies which are creating impact, whether it be across people, planet, and profit. As they say, the triple bottom line in most organizations. And I think that's excited me because there's always a new problem to solve. There are new companies coming up, and all of them need some assistance and help in understanding what markets they can cater to. And with the knowledge and experience that I've gained with working on cutting edge technology, getting exposed to wide variety of industries, I do have some knowledge to share back to the startup companies.
Right, definitely. And I think it's clear your role goes far beyond just the title. And I'm really glad to know that, the entire organization is working towards delivering some real outcomes for customers. And, what stands out to me is how your contributions really bridge the strategic and operational sides of the business. Let's get into our core discussion today, Shitendra. The global race towards AVs is, I think, rapidly accelerating, but in India, the journey is far more complex, is what I feel. Countries like United States, China, and Germany test driverless cars on public roads. India finds itself grappling with fundamental questions. Is the country ready for autonomous vehicles, or what will it take to make them a reality? Now, with the potential to improve safety, efficiency, and accessibility, autonomous vehicles promise to completely reinvent mobility. Of course, they do represent a seismic change in the transportation industry, but the integration of AVs presents both promise as well as a complication in India, because it's a country characterized by fast urbanization, varying traffic conditions, and of course, growing infrastructural difficulties. How do you view the future of AVs and even advanced driver assistance systems ADAS in the Indian context? I mean, are we truly ready for a driverless future?
Okay, yeah. I think that's been a brewing question for most. India being as complex as it can be, I think the future of autonomous driving and ADAS in specific in India is quite promising, I would say. But it does require navigating a lot of unique challenges. Like, I mean, all of us would agree the infrastructure needs a fair amount of boost. Traffic behavior is quite erratic, and I don't think so. We have all the readiness that's needed with from a regulatory perspective. So unlike the West, I think India's transition to autonomous driving will be more gradual, I would say. And I think it would move from basic driver assistance to advanced systems. And I think we already see that with a lot of Indian OEMs who have introduced the capabilities of basic driver assistance. Now, whether it is being fully utilized, whether it's been thoroughly tested, well, that's a question. I don't think so. We will have answers if we don't speak to the OEMs. But I feel India is quite well positioned to adapt and innovate in ADAS, especially when it comes to features like automatic emergency braking or AEB, and adaptive cruise control, and lane keeping assistance. I think these are already there in some of the premium vehicles that you would find in India. And I think it'll only get more superior as we move forward. I think these technologies are also helping improve vehicle safety. And as you would be fairly well aware, there is a strong focus by the government on ensuring that the safety standards on our vehicles are only sort of enhanced and there are no compromises made on that. I mean, that generally those are things that companies would end up cutting corners to keep the cost low because the ability to pay in India is still not as high. But I think the notion that if you have a lot more safety features, it would be a lot more expensive. that needs to also change, which will encourage more and more companies to start introducing safety features into the vehicle. So I think the technologies are not just improving vehicle safety, but we're also sort of looking at building public trust and acceptance towards more autonomous capabilities. I think that's the main aspect that we should be thinking of. The diversity within the country and the unpredictability on the road, I think makes it both an ideal and a complex testing ground for autonomous vehicles. I think, as on a lighter note, we always end up sharing with our folks from the West or even from the Far East that if you would like to bring in a vehicle with ADAS capabilities, send it to India, get it tested, and you would have a foolproof vehicle on the road. But nevertheless, I think leveraging a lot of key tools like advanced simulation, hardware in loop testing, data driven development, I think all of these things are the tools that really need to be used to create a resilient, India ready ADAS and autonomous solution. And I think that's what a company like Emerson's Test and Measurement Business Group also ends up doing. We try and help a lot of companies do this sort of across the globe. So, yeah, I think, like I said, I mean, India has a lot of promise, but it does need to figure out how to navigate some of the unique challenges that the country presents.
That's a fascinating perspective, and it really puts into context both the promise and the practical realities of autonomous driving in India. I completely agree that you mentioned about certain features. I mean, when you talk about ADAS, I think they're already creating a more safer and efficient driving experience. You also spoke about lane departure warnings or adaptive cruise control. I think these aren't futuristic add-ons anymore. They are features that are starting to trickle into mainstream models. And eventually, I think how quickly India can adapt and innovate these emerging cutting edge features. That it kind of builds public trust and also ensures measurable safety improvements. And I think if India gets it right, if it's able to tackle and navigate the complexities that we discuss, I think we could skip some of the intermediate adoption pains other markets have faced and leapfrog directly into a smarter and a safer mobility era, is what I feel. I think when we're talking about ADAS technologies, of course it is already here, and there's no there's no question about it, of course. But yeah, the present situation of autonomous vehicles specifically in India is characterized by pilot projects and early stage development targeted at investigating the viability and potential of AV technology in India. And it's a nation, like we discussed, it has a diverse, traffic landscape. Numerous Indian automakers like Mahindra and Mahindra, Tata Motors, in addition to startups, are testing AVs in multiple cities. However, the challenge with ADAS is validation. You can't simply wait for the perfect driving scenario to happen in real life before testing whether a feature works. And I think that's where real time test systems are stepping in. So, what are some of the unique challenges in validating ADAS technologies, specifically in Indian traffic conditions, and how do you think your company is addressing them?
Okay, yeah, good. So I think, like I mentioned in the previous segment, I did say about the unique set of challenges, and it does differ fairly significantly from the Western market, I would say, right? So the unpredictability can be, ranging from mixed road users, like you have pedestrians randomly coming in front of your vehicle, bicycles not necessarily following lanes, auto rickshaws meandering through the road in erratic fashions, unexpected animals crossing the street. And the fact that the lane markers missing on the roads, and then sometimes the roads itself not existing after a certain distance that you travel. So it does make it incredibly complex. And if you see, the environment keeps changing pretty much every day. So if you really have to even train the sensors and the systems that you have on your vehicle, the this complex environment for sensor perception and decision making algorithms becomes really hard, because there's a lot more learning that needs to happen, and there's a lot more of data that you need to get your systems exposed to and trained on, right? So what we do at NI is we recognize that some of the traditional validation methods really may not fully capture all of these corner or edge cases and all the variability that you will find in an Indian driving scenario. So what we end up doing is we focus on something called as intelligent software connected test systems, which allows us to provide that high level of flexibility and fidelity with the simulation. And what we focus on is something called as hardware in loop testing. And we continue to follow a data driven development approach. So there's a lot of continuous learning that happens, immense amount of flexibility that is provided in the system. And overall, the systems are completely software connected. So when you need to keep adapting to these kind of challenges that I mentioned, the capability on the software and what the software can do on the test system with the combination of a hardware in loop solution allows us to test for these variabilities that exist. So then it becomes a lot more simpler. Now, I won't say it's going to be 100% perfect and foolproof, because to estimate all of the corner cases and the edge cases itself could be quite challenging. But I know that there are organizations in India which are collecting immense amount of data to move from an unpredictable model to a predictable model in an Indian scenario. And we use a lot of that data also. And in fact, the data does not belong to us, it belongs to these organizations. But companies who are actually validating their ADAS technologies, they get access to some of this data, use that data on our systems to then further test the or build the sensor perception and decision making algorithms. So that's what we end up doing.
Thank you for sharing that, Shitendra. And of course, when you're talking about the complex challenges probably the Indian market is facing, I think it's really important to not just have cutting edge sensors or algorithms, but more about building resilience into the system. And with your solutions in place, which is specifically intelligent software connected test systems or hardware and loop testing, or the data development approach that you guys follow, I think that can help India to set new benchmarks for emerging, markets globally. Because I think if a proper system can handle the environment, then it can probably handle just about anywhere in the Indian context. Now, when we spoke about, technologies, I mean, of course, there are different emerging technologies that we are witnessing today. And of course, we all know about artificial intelligence. Now, let's imagine a world where the software tests itself and it is continuously and comprehensively, doing everything without human intervention. Now, that is where we are seeing a reality of autonomous testing, where AI is poised to change or transform software quality assurance. Now, as we stand on the brink of this technological leap, the promise of AI driven systems independently executing and optimizing test cases is thrilling and I think daunting as well to some extent. Now let's move on to this paradigm shift where we are witnessing is the software testing, where machines assist and lead the charge in ensuring the software quality. So how do you think artificial intelligence and machine learning are playing an important role in optimizing autonomous testing workflows and reducing the time to market?
Yeah, well, I think it's paramount for us to ensure that we use some of the latest technologies and capabilities that exist today, and AI and ML are some of those. I think when you do traditional test and measurement, you end up, I mean, in fact, whether it be traditional or not, generally test and measurement systems will generate vast amounts of data, right? And traditional tests will just provide you the data, but you most often wouldn't know what to do with the data. Now, with the onset of AI, it allows us to move beyond just the data collection. And then when you add in machine learning algorithms can now detect patterns from the data. It will start predicting failures from the data that you have collected, and it will help you automate a lot of decision making process. And I think that's the huge advantage that AI and ML gives you, because for years together you've been able to collect data, but you have not been able to derive insights out of it successfully. And AI and ML allows you to do that a lot more easily, right? So when you're embedding AI into the hardware and software platforms, like in the case of NI, we have our modular systems where we can streamline a lot of the workflows. The low value tasks get automated. We enhance efficiency through the entire process, and we also ensure faster validation cycles because of it being a completely software connected system. This not only helps reducing a lot of manual intervention, but also improves test accuracy and consistency, right? So that was one of the use cases where we have actually been able to leverage the AI capabilities and to ensure that we're able to optimize in the case of, let's say, autonomous testing workflows. And then, moreover, with AI-driven insights, support engineers, it helps, help all the engineers to identify anomalies pretty early in the development process. I think that's one of the key things when you're talking about how do you bring in products out into the market much faster. The cycle from prototyping to validation to production is a long iterative process. And if you're able to detect anomalies much early on and know exactly where in this process there is a problem or where you need to go and fix, you're able to then intervene into the development process much faster and then accelerate the product refinement and then ultimately speed up the innovation in the delivery that you have committed to. So that's where exactly AI is ending up playing a key role. And that's how we have structured it and got it into our systems as well. So we've embedded AI into the hardware and the software platforms. We use some of the commercially available technologies. And then further from there, provide all of the efficiency and the value that AI is supposed to bring into the market through these capabilities.
Definitely. And I think it really puts into a perspective how AI and ML are moving from, nice to have accelerators to becoming core nervous system of modern testing. And I think what you mentioned about optimizing workflows, where it's not about speed, it's about intelligence. And I think rather than, having teams focus less on firefighting and more on delivering quality features is, I think, where AI is playing an important role. And eventually I think what we need is the testing to be more accurate and as well as consistent, and that's where we can probably be able to meet customer expectations because they're sky high right now, and the balance between rapid delivery and uncompromised quality is a real differentiator. So I think when all the processes are model adapted and implemented right, I think AI and ML are definitely redefining what's kind of possible in product innovation.
Absolutely, I agree. And I just probably like to add another point. I think one of the key things that we do also with our workflow is we keep in mind that we still have the engineer in the loop or the human finally making the ultimate decision. It's not just the intelligence that's available through machine learning and the AI capabilities making decisions. What we end up doing is use a lot of AI to help automate the low value tasks. We help machine learning prompt and predict the anomalies and the failures, and then eventually let the engineer make the decision. I think the engineer is still the key. Unlike maybe a lot of theories that keep floating around where AI will take over the roles of the engineers, I think that's not something that we believe in. Our philosophy still believes that we still believe the fact that engineers are the key decision makers and they will be in the loop in these systems.
Definitely, I agree with you. And I think we have had a lot of discussions on our podcast episodes as well. When in terms of every technology that is coming into picture, I think there's a lot of hype and myth if the humans are going to be replaced, but eventually that's not the case. It's just the human will definitely be in the loop and will be required, I guess, in the future. The only thing is that with the human skills and the human judgment are needed in terms of making decisions will be required in the end once all the menial tasks are probably automated and done by AI itself. And I think when we're talking about AV technology, research and development is definitely required in terms of advancing the features of AV technology. Of course, when you have R&D funding as well, you have, or it empowers development of a safer or more reliable autonomous systems, and it can address the challenges that we are facing right now. Vehicle data interpretation, there's road safety, and I think many Indian companies are collaborating with global players to leverage international research and development funding. Now, the collaborations that they have, it just not only brings financial support, but it also facilitates technology transfer, enabling Indian firms to gain access to advanced AV research. And countries like USA, Japan, and Germany, which are global leaders in autonomous vehicle development, they of course present significant opportunities for collaboration with respect to the Indian context. So, how do you think partnerships with OEMs, startups, or even research institutions can help accelerate autonomous testing capabilities in India?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it's fairly close to what we close to our hearts in India. I think the number of startups and research institutions focused on some of these key technologies, especially around autonomous driving and things like that, is immense. There's a lot of potential that's there in the market. So, what we have done at NI Emerson is we have collaborated with Tata Elxsi, for example. Tata Elxsi is a pure play engineering services company, and along with them, we have initiated a mobility innovation center, which is again hosted in one of the Tata Elxsi facilities in Bangalore. And it's a key enabler for accelerating autonomous and ADAS testing in India. So it essentially offers OEMs advanced real world and simulated testing environment. And now you speak about software defined vehicles. So it sort of integrates into the concept of software defined vehicles, EVs, and autonomous systems. So that's one of the partnerships that we are fairly excited about. And, we set it up almost about 18 months ago. And that's allowed for OEMs to come and really explore what, the capabilities of companies like a pure play engineering services company and an OEM like Emerson Test and Measurement can bring on the table. At the same time, we've also enhanced our partnerships and further also partnered with Tata Technologies, for example, who are also focused on providing solutions around, in these areas, mainly focused around software defined vehicle, and ADAS plays a key role in that. We are also seeing very strong impact, like reducing the EV test rig development time by over 60%. And then you scale infotainment validation to over almost 30,000 scenarios, which drastically helps cutting down the time to market. And partnerships like these really add value because companies like, some of the engineering services companies, they end up working with a wide variety of OEMs, even with tier one companies, and they have a fair amount of knowledge that they have built within their organization. So they're able to, with every increasing customer, they're able to add a lot more value and help them, reduce their time to market significantly. And the Mobility Innovation Center that we have also serves as a collaborative hub for startups and research institutions. So it'll offer you access to all the cutting edge technology that is required for test automation and the simulation tools. So companies can actually come in there and then validate and their prototypes if needed. So which allows for faster iteration because sometimes startups do not have access to some of the cutting edge technology that they really need to bring out a I would say quality product out into the market much faster, and that's what we actually help enable. So the faster iteration and the validation under a very specific condition, and more so, you could get a lot of access to the data from Indian roads through, like I mentioned earlier, there are various companies who are collecting data, so that can be integrated as well, right? So, what it actually does is these partnerships are really helping us build some robust AI-enabled and scalable validation frameworks, which allows us to position India as a country as a sort of a global testbed for next-gen mobility solutions. Actually, even before the Indian vehicle started adopting ADAS capabilities, we had all of these tier one companies and even some of the global capability centers of the OEMs, which are positioned in India, doing a lot of the tests in India for ADAS, right? So that knowledge as a community exists here in the country. And I think it's only important for us to provide the right avenues. And I think we as a company want to continue to keep doing that. We believe that the startup community is one such community that needs to be harnessed and fostered very closely. They need to be sort of handheld whenever possible. And I think we continue to do that because it aligns well with our philosophy. We want to help engineers and scientists solve some of the world's most interesting challenges.
That's fascinating, Shitendra, because what you're describing really underscores how collaborative ecosystems are becoming backbone of innovation in autonomous testing. India in particular is in this unique sweet spot. OEMs bring the manufacturing expertise and global scale. Startups can, inject agility and fresh thinking, and research institutions provide the deep technical and scientific rigor. And it also strikes that, this having this partnership model, I think India can leapfrog some of the legacy hurdles other markets face. And, instead of reinventing the wheel in silos, we are seeing shared infrastructure, joint test beds, and knowledge exchange driving the next generation of autonomous capabilities, whether that's in automotive or industrial automation and even defense application for that matter. I think in a few years, these partnerships aren't just helping India to catch up, but I think they're putting in a position to lead in certain areas of autonomous testing globally. Having said that, one last question for you, Shitendra, is that what's your vision for India's role in global autonomous vehicle ecosystem in the next 5 to 10 years? I mean, do you think India can become a testing and innovation hub for ADAS and autonomous technologies?
Absolutely. I think, like I mentioned to you earlier, well before the Indian OEMs began to adopt some of the autonomous vehicle capabilities and technologies and the autonomous technologies as such, the global capability centers and the tier one R&D facilities did use the Indian talent to actually go ahead and do a lot of validation and testing. And I remember in the early days, there were some companies that I cannot name, but they really were pushing the limits on actually validating some of the ADAS technologies. And back in the day when we would be engaging with these companies, we would keep questioning, say, would we be ever able to see some of these capabilities in India? I mean, and you would keep joking around. I mean, how can this ever be successful in a market like India? And here we are, where we already see a lot of companies have it. In fact, a lot of times we end up speaking about ADAS and associate that with a four-wheeler vehicle. Today, you have Indian companies who are building two-wheelers, and they have something called as advanced rider assistance systems. So it's definitely already scaled beyond. And I think India holds immense potential to emerge as a fairly key player in the global autonomous vehicle community and in the ADAS ecosystem. So not necessarily as the first adopter of full autonomy. I don't think so. We will probably get to that state, or even if we do, it'll be far-fetched future. But as a strategic innovation and a testing hub, for sure, we have been doing that in our own ways, and I think it's only increasing. As you may already be hearing, a lot of companies now, especially in the automotive world, on the tier one side, even on the OEM side, are shifting their capabilities to India, both on R&D and manufacturing. And back in the day, we were known to be an R&D services country. Today, we are doing a lot of core R&D work. So I think that speaks volumes about the capabilities that exist in the country. And it's also about cost-effective R&D and engineering talent, right? I think and with the diverse real-world testing scenarios that we have to offer, the rise of automotive tech hubs and the government support just makes it a lot more sweeter. So yeah, for sure, I think we will be sort of accelerating our capabilities significantly. We will definitely be one of the leading testing and innovation hubs in the world, and we already have a strong springboard for us to propel further ahead, whether it be through testing, validation, and then eventually for adoption.
Definitely. And I think despite the challenges, the long-term future of AVs in India remains promising. And just like we discussed, I think in the future ahead, we can see AVs could, operate with minimal human interaction. And from the promise of real-time ADAS validation to the complexity of navigating a truly driverless future, one constant definitely emerges. That is, testing is not the end of the process. It's the foundation that we will be building some tech advanced AVs, and without it, everything else is just theory. So thank you so much, Shitendra, for coming on a podcast today and helping us understand that India definitely has a chance to be, I think, to even lead the global autonomous wave, and in creating some solutions that are definitely needed in complex driving environments. And I think the Emerson testing group is at the forefront of it. And I think if the testing is done right, we might have a future where autonomous mobility isn't just safe and efficient, but it's something that people can genuinely trust. So thank you so much for your insights today. It was pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you for having me on this podcast. And I was excited to share some of my knowledge on this. Hoping the listeners got some good outcomes out of the podcast as well. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Shitendra. So, this is for our listeners. I hope you enjoyed today's discussion and thank you for tuning in. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep exploring ideas, and always remember innovation is a journey, not a destination. And you can view all our previous podcasts on Spotify and other leading platforms. Thank you so much.